Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of the Daily Stand-Up. Without any further ado, let's get started. I'm Lee Henson, president and founder of Agile Dad. In keeping with the theme for this week, we started out on Monday talking about vision and strategy. Then we dove in and talked about the importance of road mapping and how it ties back to Agile and why it's important. Today, I wanted to address the topic of backlog item creation. Now, this is one where we're going to go back a little bit to our previous week where we talked about the importance of having the analyst to support a product owner, the business analyst, functional analyst, and technical analyst. And if you remember, just a refresher, we said that the BA, or business analyst, was responsible for understanding and keeping their thumb on the pulse of the consumer. We said the functional analyst was responsible, or FA, is responsible for understanding strategic whereabouts. So where, as an organization, are we trying to go strategically? And we said the technical analyst was responsible for helping the team and the organization better understand technological feasibility and whether or not something was actually possible. So if you put all that together, today we're going to talk about how to leverage those individuals to gather information as a product owner to facilitate backlog item creation. Now, as always, I want to remind you that on your Agile projects or Scrum projects, you should only have one product owner. This isn't a competition to have more people trying to give input or to have multiple product owners or a product ownership committee. This is a way for the product owner to have a group of people to consult, to gather information so that they can make the best choices regarding product ownership and regarding implementation and build out of the items that they're going to eventually become the product backlog. Now, during vision and strategy, we said that you needed two vision and strategy statements, one that aligned to the organization and one that organized or aligned to a product. And I think that today we're going to talk about how we take that vision and strategy statement that we have that aligns with a product, how to lay it out into a sensible group of features into a roadmap, which is what we discussed yesterday. And today we're going to talk about how to leverage POBAFATA to create that backlog that you dream of, to get the items that you want. And there are a few very distinct, important steps in order for you to be able to successfully do this. The first step is for the whole group collectively to get their head around the work, to review the vision and strategy, to have a discussion with stakeholders, and to make sure that they properly understand exactly what's being asked for. What problem is it trying to solve? Who's our target audience? Do we have key personas identified? Are there any mission-critical dates or timeline things that we need to be aware of? Do we have any contracts or things that are locked in that we need to make sure we satisfy? And once we have our head around that understanding and we know that our item is queued up to be the very next thing that's going to be worked on, so we're number one on the roadmap for next quarter, then it's important for us to call the BAFATA together and to start creating backlog items. Now, in this scenario, you might have a product owner who's incredibly familiar with the product. They've been using it for a long time, and they can sort of lead the charge and lead the initiative and get people to start talking about the things that are going to be the most important and newest and latest and greatest upcoming features. They could have conversations regarding how they're going to improve the product or service. Maybe it's an item or a product that's been out for a while and we're going to rejuvenate or revive or freshen up that product or service. In other cases, it might be how are we going to wind down this product or service for the new one that's going to be coming in, that's going to take its place and eventually replace the product or service that's in existence. And, no matter what it is, it's important for us to get our head around an understanding of what the goal is for that product. Where are we trying to take it? What is it trying to do? And then from that point, we need to get each of the different analysts to work with the product owner in a brainstorming session that's going to align with the product owner availability, obviously, and help them. In general, you'll see that organizations or teams have a few weeks for the product owner to work with the BAFATA to create backlog items that are eventually going to be consumed in release planning. So if I know that my item's number one on a charter, or number one on a list, I should say, for the next round. So if we're in currently Q2 or Q3, we might say, yours is going to be first for Q4. So at that point, I should start thinking about, okay, what items do I need to create in order to have things ready for the team to consume at release planning? Now, these should all have a high-level title and description, and that could be done by anyone in a group. So the group should sit down together and brainstorm. And when they come into that brainstorming session, they should realize that no idea is a bad idea, right? At this point, we can throw out bad ideas later. I just want to get all these ideas on paper, on index cards, or into a system, depending on however you're doing it. I just want to have a really nice brainstorming session where no voice is weakened, right? Once I have that information, a clear title that should be 10 words or less, a description that says, as a who, I would like to do what, so that why, just so we can make sure we understand who the target audience is, what problem we're trying to solve, or what we're trying to make better, and why we're doing it. I want to make sure that the next step is to focus on the functional analyst. So the FA will take that card, and they'll say, okay, once we have the whole stack of cards created with all title and description, then I can take the cards and hand them over to the FA, and together they can work, and the FA can review the cards and align them strategically, whether the cards are high, medium, or low in priority. Now, I want to make sure I'm clear, high priority doesn't mean high importance, because if that were the case, everything would either be high, really high, or really, really high. We'd all be in Denver right now, right? The Mile High City. And that's not what we're trying to do. We want the functional analyst to say, on a scale of urgency, understanding that everything you're asking for is important, which items are high urgency, which items outweigh the rest, and they can peg those cards with a high, medium, or low tag. Next, we want to hand those cards to the business analyst, where the business analyst can put in a Moscow rating, must have, should have, could have, or would like from the consumer's perspective, saying, hey, this item's a deal breaker, it's a must have, or it's really important, but it's not a deal breaker, which makes it a should have. Could have means it doesn't positively or negatively impact me. And then would like would be, wow, that's a cool feature. If you start the sentence with, what would really be cool? Or if you start the sentence with, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you paid for a whole seat, but you're only going to need the edge. Those are the kind of things that, the pleasers in the Kano model, the things that shake us to the core and say, yes, that's what we need to be doing, right? Those are the ones that I want to focus on there. And I want to try to get at least one of those pleasers in every sprint, because I think it's important for teams to recognize that, hey, pleasers do matter, because those are the things that impress the consumer the most. So even if we're not working on all those must-have, detailed, deep, dark items for this particular product or project, maybe in a sprint we have a pleaser or two to throw in to keep the consumer interested so that we can get a different product or service out to market faster and then focus our attention on their product next. It's a silly scheme, but it tends to work if you apply it correctly. So this allows us to literally swarm to limited work in progress and get those things delivered. And then finally, we have a technical analyst who will work with the product owner to t-shirt size, or at least put an initial t-shirt size on the card. I'm not saying that the product owner or the TA gets the final say on what the estimate is. What I'm saying is, if you've ever used any of the tools that are on the market today, they typically have two fields for estimate. One for an initial estimate, and then one for an estimate. The initial estimate is a silly field because typically when you put information in there and you submit it or save it, it disappears. And most people don't understand why it disappears. This estimate or initial estimate was not intended to be visible to everyone in the organization. The initial estimate was supposed to be captured based on a product owner's initial hunch for size that later we can use release planning to compare to see what the team size is, so that way we know whether the team size aligns. And the purpose of hiding it is so that the team's estimate doesn't become skewed. We don't want their estimate to reflect, oh, well, if the product owner says this, then it must be this. We want this to be something where the team and the product owner can work together to discuss based on what their estimates are, so that we have better alignment and better understanding. This is going to allow us to identify if there's any clear misunderstanding between what the scope of what the product owner is expecting versus what the team says that they can deliver. So I think it's incredibly important for us to have both of those outlines that we can understand and have crystal clear delivery and say, yes, this is what we need to be doing. So that's going to be applied tomorrow when we talk more about release planning and big room planning and how that sizing works in those environments. But for now, we want the TA to provide their best guess at an estimate and validate that with the product owner to make sure that they have their head around the scope of what the product owner is asking for. At this point, I may or may not worry about acceptance criteria in the back of the cards, because this is all still work that's high level that's going to be proposed based on a feature that's been outlined in a roadmap. So we want to be clear that this backlog item creation workshop, many of the items that you create may get thrown out. Some of the items may get resized or broken down. This is just in order for us, this creation workshop is in order for us to get our head around brainstorming for ideas, consolidating the brainstormed ideas, and creating a working backlog that we can use in a release planning session that'll allow the team to get their head around the big picture of what you're trying to do regarding that product or service. Well, I hope this information was helpful to you. As always, we invite you to visit agiledad.com, where we got lots of information and lots of exciting things coming up. We encourage you to sign up for upcoming webinars. We got a few free webinars coming up. We'd love to see you there. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile. As always, take care, my friends, and we'll see you next time.